Hey everyone, today I wanted to talk about the DNC server that was hacked by Russians and the fact that the FBI never actually looked at the physical server in their investigation of the Russian hack. This is a huge sticking point for me. It's also for Trump. Trump's tweeted out, why didn't the FBI actually look at the server? The answer that's given by people is, well, there was a copy made of the server, and that's just as well. The FBI would have been able to get all the evidence they needed off that copy. But this is nonsense for several reasons. First, I'm going to link an article below that shows James Comey admits that they actually prefer to have access to the physical server. So if you're the FBI and you're doing one of the biggest cases you'll ever work on, wouldn't you want to use the top methods that you have? Why would you use some secondary method unless there was a reason that you couldn't have access to the physical server? Well, we know there was a reason because Comey also testifies the DNC didn't want the FBI to have access to the physical server. Why would that be? Why would the Democrats who have been hacked, who they've claimed that this is one of the biggest stories ever. Some have called it an act of war. We've had a 2-year investigation over this. If you're them, wouldn't you want the FBI to find those responsible immediately? Wouldn't you want the FBI to have the tools to make sure that this couldn't happen again? But instead, you hold back the most valuable piece of evidence. Now, the argument people have given is, well, a copy is just as good as the physical server. Again, Comey admits that that's not the case. They usually prefer to have physical access. And keep in mind who this copy was made by. It was made by a DNC hired firm called Crowdstrike. Now, one, if the DNC had motive to try to blame Russia for this, which it seems like they possibly could have that motive, then it would make sense for their agency that they hired to try to make the facts look like Russians did this. There is no way for the FBI to know if the copy they were given by CrowdStrike is a actual direct 100% copy or if there were things altered. No way whatsoever, unless they got to see the physical server, which they did not. The second thing is, even if the reason that people give for not wanting the DNC not wanting the FBI to look at their servers, maybe they had something they didn't want the FBI to see that wasn't related to the Russian act. Could have been some other crime, or it could have been strategies or something with the election or things of that nature, and that they didn't want the FBI getting access to this during an election season. What that argument really proves is that this copy isn't a 100% copy of the actual server. Because if it was, then the DNC would have no reason to want to hide the physical server because they were hiding things. Does this make sense? If it's a 100% copy, then the DNC might as well have just said, okay, you might as well look at the server because the copy we're about to give you is exactly the same thing. So anything we had to hide would be visible to you anyways. And there's no other reason why the DNC wouldn't want the FBI to look at these servers, right? They like I said, they want to get to the bottom of the investigation. There's only two possible explanations. They're intentionally trying to mislead people, or they have something to hide. And both of those show that the actual copy made by their paid firm, CrowdStrike, wouldn't be the exact same as the physical server itself. Now, the other argument that, well, the FBI, they don't want to be monkeying around. Like, why didn't they insist, in other words? Why didn't the FBI say, we don't care what you want. This is such a huge case. It could be an act of war. We insist we're going to look at this server anyways, which they certainly would have the power to do. But for some reason they didn't. And people say, well, they didn't want to get involved in during the election, which is laughable given their stance on the Trump election, sending spies instead of telling Trump during the election, hey, we think there might be Russians trying to infiltrate you. Instead, they're sending spies to look at his campaign. They're wiretapping people that were formerly in his campaign so that they can get access to all of the information that communications he had during the campaign with and being on Trump's team. So it's clear that the FBI really wasn't concerned with not interfering in an election or not rocking the boat and looking at information during an election season, because they did it to Trump. And Comey, even you could argue he did it to Hillary when he reopened the investigation, though he was forced to do that, as we can get to in a different video. So the point I'm trying to make is the argument that everyone makes that, oh, well, the FBI got a copy of the server and it's just as good. No, it's not. And it's proved by the fact that if the copy was the exact same as the server, then their DNC would have had nothing to hide and just allowed the FBI to look at the server in the first place. It's a shame that the DNC, and it's more than a shame, it's corrupt that the DNC didn't allow the FBI to look at this server, and it's corrupt that the FBI didn't insist. And it just goes to another fact to show that this investigation is a sham, and it's not really concerned with fully meting out Russian interference. It's more concerned with picking one side over the other.